Welcome agents, Title Update 5 and Episode 1 are live. The biggest update since the launch of The Division 2, and today I want to give you my review. To do this I have broken down each part into subheadings and I'm going to go through each one giving you my opinion with that new additional change, and at the end of the video I will tell you whether I think this update in Episode 1 are a success or not. Now I've played through each new thing to be added and I've tested most changes with this update, i.e. the skills, crafting, quality of life and the like. I'd appreciate your feedback on this one with a comment down below, and if you enjoyed it enough, then please hit the like button too. Let's begin. With Episode 1 we got two new main missions, Camp Oakwhite and Manning National Zoo, each providing additional narrative content. Camp Oakwhite takes you to an estate nestled within the woodlands, where you'll have intel that President Ellis is held up. Manning National Zoo has you go in there to take down Emmeline Shaw, leader of the outcasts who has barricaded herself in the zoo. Now without a doubt, where both these missions shine, especially Manning National Zoo, are the environments and the artwork. Manning National Zoo has to be one of the best looking and feeling story missions I've ever played through. The attention to detail is second to none in this mission, introducing a lot of new wildlife like monkeys, parrots and even alligators at one point. Likewise with Camp White Oak, the interiors and exteriors of the estate buildings are incredibly ambient and immersive. On locations to these buildings you will pass by an open lake with a very scenic view, the like we haven't seen since The Division when you could look across Manhattan Bridge. But I guess this isn't a surprise though. The Division 2, just like The Division, is a beautiful game, so I expected this to continue into the first episode. I cannot stress though how good Manning National Zoo looks, and how good it feels to run through the crocodile pit for example. It's truly breathtaking. With all of that said, there is one thing I think the devs really missed a trick on though, and that's the use of the newly found animals amongst Manning National Zoo. There are some really cool instances like the crocodile pit, where you approach the viewing glass window and you're greeted with a pretty ominous crocodile roar, followed by the sight of them scurrying into the murky water. As you make your way into the pit, I couldn't help but feel uneasy at the thought of crocodiles maybe having some role in the next encounter. And this uneasy feeling is elevated once you play the echo, which shows someone being eaten by a crocodile. At that moment, I was ready for a crocodile fight in some capacity, but instead, a door opened, a named boss ran out wielding a weapon, and it was very anticlimactic. I'm not saying we should have been chased out of the zoo by some 200-foot megalodon, but it just felt like the environment was underutilized. Camp White Oak, whilst graphically beautiful, gave me the same feeling I got from all of the other missions within the game, which isn't really a bad thing because they're all generally quite good, but it offered nothing we hadn't seen already. Overall, the two new main missions play very well, and they gave me the same feeling I got when first playing through the campaign of The Division 2, except this time these two missions are more wide open, especially Manning National Zoo, and they feel like a step up in respect of their environments and artistic design. As for the encounters, there's nothing new here, which is a shame. Expeditions are a new PvE activity that offer new narrative and gameplay opportunities, providing new collectibles, treasure rooms, puzzles, gameplay mechanics and more. Now for the first expedition we got Kenley College, a vast site made up of 3 locations, each with their own theme and tone. Now each location is opened up 1 week after another, meaning that my review of this activity is based purely on the first location, which is now available to Year 1 Pass owners. Now when you enter Kenley College you are tasked with 3 different things to investigate, each providing you with some context and some lore. Now each activity you investigate has different things for you to complete. An example would be to defend points A to D for 5 minutes, ensuring none of the points are destroyed. Now along the way to these activities you might come across a puzzle. One example is a fuse box that needs to be restored, and to do this you must link all 4 other boxes in the correct order. Now once you've completed all 3 investigation activities, you have completed the first site, and then you're required to wait a week before the rewards become attainable again and the next site is opened. Now when the developers revealed the expeditions mode, they specifically said they wanted this to be a weekly activity rather than something you do daily, and herein lies one of the first problems I have with expeditions. Replayability is a real issue for The Division 2, and I was hoping expeditions would give something like this, but unlike the Underground for The Division, it does not. Talking of the Underground, I think everyone was expecting something similar here, and that's not the developer's fault because it was never sold as an activity like the Underground. What it does tell you, however, is that the community wants, which is a PvE mode which offers daily replayability and a variation in themes. Now maybe I'm being premature here, but the first site really offered nothing in the way of variation in themes. It's one big building that you run through to complete the investigations, overlapping with areas that you've seen before. The developers did say each site is a different theme and tone, so maybe in 4 weeks, when they're all available, maybe then it'll be different. On a positive note, I did like the puzzle mechanics. That's of course a personal preference, and I like to see more of this. Aside from that though, overall, I do not think expeditions are good at this point. I, like many, was expecting something similar to the Underground, but a more evolved version. The mastery system that was meant to come with expeditions sounded cool, and I think this would have really helped with the replayability issue this new mode suffers heavily from, but unfortunately, this didn't make the cut. Expeditions just feel very shallow. Defend this point or collect that thing have been done many times before. A complete run of the first expedition took me about 45 minutes, and this is meant to be a weekly activity. It's a real shame because I was expecting a lot more, and frankly, if the other sites are similar to this first site, expeditions will quickly become probably the most underwhelming PvE experience I've played in the Division. Episode 1 introduced 2 new exotic items, the Black Tusk Special Unit Gloves, or BTSU Gloves, and the Diamondback Rifle. Now, I'd like to have given you my opinion on the Diamondback Rifle, but this is time-gated behind the Expedition's game mode, meaning this won't be available until the 4th week. So at launch of this episode, we've got 1 exotic to get right now, which I personally think is very underwhelming. Episode 1 was sold as one of the big free updates of Year 1, and 1 exotic, it just isn't enough. I expected something like 3 to 5 exotics might be better, and encourage people to stick around longer. So, how do you get the BTSU gloves? Is there some puzzle and or series of achievements to complete in order to obtain this exotic? Well, no. The BTSU gloves trip pretty much anywhere, and it all comes down to RNG. They have a very low drop rate, and that's it. I've seen some people get them on their first run of Camp White Oak, and I've seen others get multiple drops in other activities. I personally don't like exotic drops purely being based on RNG, and I think some sort of exotic quest or achievement should be implemented, giving everyone the opportunity to get these rewards if they do the quest or achievement. We know how bad RNG is in the game, so to add more and more exotic gear to that loot pool, it just dilutes it even further. So 3 to 5 exotics and something like exotic quests, or like the Nemesis, where you have to collect parts to make up the weapon, should have been implemented here, I think. So what about the exotic gloves themselves? Now, from what I've been able to test, they can be very good in PvE, but they are very situational, which makes them almost not usable in PvP. There is a situation where these gloves can absolutely give you an absolute ton of damage, but in all cases, these are really only effective against challenging difficulty or named enemies, and again, they're situational. Overall, I think the BTSU gloves are really strong for status effect skill builds, for endgame content, but are really not that useful for anything easier than that. The method of getting these exotics, or this exotic glove, is purely RNG, which drops from anywhere, and the Diamondback is time-gated, both of which are disappointing. I expected more. Aside from the 2 exotics, we did get 2 new weapons with this update, the Stoner LMG and the Carbine 7. The Stoner LMG is a slow-firing LMG, so it's in the best class of LMGs for DPS in the game. With that said, the Stoner has a base magazine of 200, which means the base damage has been reduced to compensate for not having to reload all that often. The main issue with this is, of course, the base damage of the Stoner LMG does not compete with the other strong LMGs in the game, like the M60 or the M249, which can both get upwards of 150 in the mag. The main issue is you simply don't need a mag size of 200 in the game, so the Stoner's main selling point and reason for a lower base damage is kind of null and void. And to make it clear, the base damage of the Stoner LMG is about 30% lower than the M249B, for example, or the M60. Here you can see in normalized the M249B is 10.7k, and the Stoner LMG is 7.1k, which is a huge difference. Base damage aside, the Stoner LMG drops with a unique talent called Overwhelm. Suppressing an enemy that is not currently suppressed grants plus 5% weapon damage for 10 seconds. Max stack is 5. Now at first you read plus 5% weapon damage and it stacks for 5, meaning 25% damage, and it sounds good, but that's very far from the truth. This weapon is a contradiction to the whole LMG class. I only actually thought about this when watching a stream from EasyTV. As you probably know, all LMGs have a class-specific talent, which gives them plus 15% damage to targets out of cover. But for Overwhelm to become effective, you need to suppress an enemy, which only occurs when they're in cover. Now, I get the point of the Overwhelm talent. You're meant to suppress them, rush them, and get that increased damage whilst they're in cover. But this means that the class-specific talent is ignored. I guess the only real advantage here is that this talent means you do increased damage to targets in and out of cover. But I really do not think this is a good talent at all. Okay, let's just move on to the Carbine 7. I guess the first thing to note about the Carbine 7 is, again, the base damage is significantly lower than the P416. A normalised P416 here is 11k, but my Carbine 7 only has 8.5k, which is again a good 20 to 30% less base damage. Now, the reason I would compare this with the P416 is, firstly, the P416 is the best non-exotic assault rifle in the game for raw damage, and the Carbine 7 is in the same subclass with the same RPM and mag size. So far then, the Carbine 7 has less damage than the P416 and is the same weapon type. So what about the unique talent for this weapon, Overflowing? Every 3 reloads from empty increases your base magazine capacity by 100%. What can I say about this talent? I've used the Carbine 7 quite a lot, and I really do not see the benefit of this talent at all. It's not very often that your magazine is reduced to 0 before you reload, because in almost all encounters, 50 bullets is enough to take down an enemy. Well, for the P416 it is. The Carbine 7 suffers the same symptoms as the Stoner LMG. Both are very underpowered because they have a magazine size or talent that could increase their sustained damage due to their increased mag size. But this means no one is really going to use these weapons over the M60 or the P416. It's a shame really, because I think both the Stoner LMG and the Carbine 7, they have a cool design and both feel good to use in-game. Until they up the base damage of these weapons though, unfortunately, they're going to take their place in my stash, along with almost every other gun in the game that's not the P416. With episode 1 came Title Update 5, which brought a whole host of new changes, skills being the main overhaul, and rightly so. The developers decided that the best way to balance skills was to take the DPS from the P416 as the high ceiling and buff all skills almost all the way up to this ceiling, meaning skills are very powerful in PvE now. For the first time since the Division, I've actually created a cluster seeker mine build with a lot of explosive damage, doing nearly 500,000 damage per mine, meaning in total I'm doing nearly 2 million damage, and this doesn't include any of the talents that increase skill damage, like tech support. I've created a shield build that gives me almost invulnerability with crazy shield health, and all of this is possible because of this update, and this has now put skills on par with weapon damage builds within PvE. Now, I did make a video prior to this update about the Defender drone skill because I predicted it would become far too strong, which is exactly what happened, but to the credit of the developers, this was fixed, so now the Defender drone is more balanced. The changes made here are very positive, and to me, they've created a template for future updates on core issues with the game, like PvP for example. The only bad thing about these positive changes to skills are they are heavily negated in normalised PvP modes, meaning even my explosive seeker mine build, which does 1 million damage in PvE, only just tickles the armour of enemy agents in normalised PvP. I would have liked to have seen these skills, especially damage dealing skills, be effective in PvP as well, but that's just a minor negative. Aside from that, skills are now just as important to build as weapon damage builds, and what this means is hybrid builds appear to be the meta right now, which to me proves that there's actually some good balance right now with skills and weapon damage. Title Update 5 brought a new discovery mode for the raid and a new shepherd system, which is an addition to the call for backup system. The new discovery mode was implemented to allow players to matchmake in an easier version of the normal raid so they can learn the mechanics and ultimately take their team into the normal mode. Now, I think this mode is a great addition to the raid. For some time, players have wanted a matchmaking mode for the normal raid, myself included, and whilst this isn't that, I think it's a good balance between those players and the players who think that matchmaking for the normal road or normal raid is not a good idea. Do I hope that there's some sort of LFG type addition to the game for the next raid? Yes, but I think the discovery mode is a good step in the right direction. The shepherd system was implemented with TU5 to encourage players to assist their fellow agents with the call to backup feature. Essentially, you would answer a call to backup which would fill up an assistance bar. Once the gauge was full, then the agent in need will get a chance to endorse you, which is added to a new shepherd rank that goes all the way up to 99. Once you get 10 endorsements, you get a unique title, and the devs confirm there should be some vanity type items for ranking up to 99. So, I completely understand why the developers thought this system would be a good idea. The call to backup feature has been more of a hindrance since launch, and this new system rewards those that actually answer the call and assist others. Sounds good, right? Well, Yeah, it kind of is, but it has some real issues. Firstly, most people do not know how to actually endorse other players. Secondly, most people just want assistance with one activity, meaning that if you help them, your assistance bar will go up. But when they leave the session, you lose all of that progress. Thirdly, and probably the most frustrating, the developers need to understand, and I hate to say this, but players are generally quite toxic. So a lot of the time, they simply leave and just don't endorse you, even when they have the opportunity to. I said I wouldn't tell the devs how to fix anything, but I have to here. They cannot allow players to give others experience. If you help someone, the assistance bar should automatically fill up, and you shouldn't lose any progress if you or they leave the session. Overall, the Shepherd system was and is a good idea, but it's just not well executed. Aside from the main additions with episode 1 and the changes with title update 5, we did get some quality of life changes worth talking about. You can now craft up to level 500, and you can recalibrate those crafted items now as well, which is a fantastic change. Cassie Mendoza, the gunrunner, now sells 500 gear score items and exotics, although as of me writing this script, Cassie Mendoza is not selling exotics. Once this is working as intended, this is a great change for the gunrunner. All exotics were changed so they drop at 500 gear score with max attributes, meaning in TU5, no two exotics will be different, and exotics will now drop from named bosses if you already have that weapon. So I don't like these two quality of life changes to exotics. Firstly, I don't understand why exotics, which have all been bumped up to max score and have no variation, need to drop from bosses. They will only drop if you already have one, and it will be exactly the same as the one you already have. So what's the point? I just don't understand. Secondly, because these exotics now drop from bosses, they have further diluted the loot pool, which is already very diluted, and they've added no value there. I think these changes to exotics are both bad and a real step backwards. They end in the quality of life changes on a positive note. Title Update 5 implemented a way for you to share blueprints across characters. And what's great about this, aside from the obvious, was the devs made it so it's an opt-in feature. That I think was a great move, because a lot of players, when starting a new character, like to farm for everything all over again, and that includes blueprints. I myself am one of those players, so I think this is really good stuff here. Rather than just forcing it on everyone, they've got an opt-in feature, and that's cool. Okay, so to wrap this review up and to summarise everything, I think episode 1 was disappointing. The 2 new missions were good. Expeditions right now are a 45-minute playthrough for a weekly activity, and they add nothing to the game. Title Update 5 did some fantastic work for skills, and there are some really good quality of life changes here, but there are also some not so good ones too. 2 steps forwards and 1.75 steps back. These changes have moved the game in the right direction ever so slightly, but there's simply no replayability in the game. I did the 2 new missions and expeditions in an hour and a half, and that's it. I've exhausted all of the new content. Overall, episode 1 is a letdown, and it will not sustain the small community that is left. Title Update 5 was great, but what's the point when there's no content there? The Division was built on the Dark Zone and PvP, and that, along with the total shambles called loot, has to be addressed for Title Update 6, or I'm afraid for the future of this franchise. If the devs do not get their act together quick and deliver on these, I really think the small community that is left will be gone by the end of the year. I hope you enjoyed my review of Episode 1 and Title Update 5. I'd appreciate your feedback in the comments down below. It did take me quite some time to write the script for this video, so if you enjoyed it, I'd be really grateful if you hit the like button down below. Thanks for all your support and sticking around until the end. Until the next one, Epic out.